The IRS basically said, hey, we don't believe that any of these business expenses that you claimed were real. So we are removing them from your tax return and you now owe us something like $9,000. What the heck? Welcome to Money Musings, a podcast that breaks down money, investing, and wealth with zero BS and unapologetic irreverence. I'm your host and money co-conspirator, Stephanie Zenos. Let's get into it. I wanted to come on here today and share a little experience that I had with the IRS, where they audited me a few years ago in a super uncool way. This is a story that I've shared with some people, and I think it's really important to just understand that the IRS will just audit you randomly sometimes. And there are certain things that will trigger the IRS to audit you. But in general, I wanted to have this conversation just so you know your rights. A lot of times we just don't know what to do in that situation. And now in the era of ChatGPT and AI, like we can get help that way. But I still wanted to share this story as I think it's just so helpful to understand like what it takes to go head to head with the IRS. And by the way, I fucking won, but it took 3 years. And it really is like a game of attrition sometimes. They just want you to quit. They just want to like break you down and keep making you do things until you give up and then let them have the money. But they essentially kept $10,000 that was mine, and I was fighting for it. I was so mad. Even just principal alone, I was like, I have to get this money back. So here's what happened. I retired in 2018 at the age of 32. So this was like a while ago, guys. Now, that first year, I went from making like a great SpaceX salary and having stock income to making $0. And so my income dropped significantly. It took about a couple months for me to start my business. And I really was like going deep those few months about what my purpose was and what would I do with my one precious life now that I was retired, financially independent, and had no excuses for not doing exactly what I was meant to do on this planet. So anyway, I decided that what I was meant to do on this planet was to help other women and help other people with financial independence, to give them financial sovereignty by teaching them tools around personal finance and investing. Fuck yes. God, I still get so excited thinking about it. And so basically my income dropped a lot. I started doing small workshops. I started working with people one-on-one. I was just getting my feet wet. So my business probably made like, I don't know, $30,000 or some amount of money that year. And so what happened was on paper, when I filed my taxes, I went from making like a reasonable amount with a normal salary to a beginning of business amount and having some expenses. So like very little money. And maybe like 4 years after that, I was audited. And this was probably 2022 at the time. And the IRS basically said, hey, we don't believe that any of these business expenses that you claimed were real. So we are removing them from your tax return and you now owe us something like $9,000. What the fuck? So I wasn't really sure what to do, but I had a tax guy at the time and I went to him and I said, hey, I'm getting audited. Like, what should I do? And he was like, don't worry about it. Like, we'll submit, your spreadsheets. Like, you keep really good records. We'll send this to the IRS. It won't be a problem. So I was like, okay, great. And when you have a tax person, they are supposed to help you with this type of thing. If you get audited and you use the tax person that year, like the year that they're auditing, they should help you send the documentation in. Well, about 6 months later, I got another letter from the IRS, basically that was like a bill, like, hey, now you owe this money. And I was so confused. I finally got on the phone with someone at the IRS and they were like, yeah, we never got anything from you. Like, you never responded to the audit. And so therefore we moved forward and now you owe us this. And I was like, what the heck? So at that point, then I had to appeal. And I never heard from my tax guy. I could never get him to confirm whether he actually uploaded anything. And I suspected that maybe he just never uploaded anything. Then the IRS was like, you need to file this appeal and then you need to send us all of the information. So at that point, I filed the appeal and I sent them the spreadsheets that I had. And then they responded saying, yeah, sorry, like you actually need to send us receipts. Now, looking back to that year, I had like hundreds of receipts. And it was at that point, like 3 or 4 years later. So I had to go through my emails and take screenshots. I didn't have paper receipts for most of the business I was doing. It was like tools, right? It was like using Canva, or it was like renting a place where you pay online so that you can host a workshop or whatever. So I didn't have like paper receipts for those kinds of transactions at this point. Everything was digital. So I'm screenshotting hundreds of receipts from 4 or 5 years ago at the time. And I finally get ready. I'm like, okay, I can't tell you how much time I spent on this, by the way. And at this point, I was just like, I'm going to give up. Like, this is so messed up. I spent probably like hours and days as part of weeks. And I had more than 100 screenshots and things to upload to the IRS that proved my business expenses. So I call them again and I'm like, okay, great. I have everything prepared. Like, how do I submit it? And they're like, oh yeah, you just have to print it out and like send it into this address. And I'm like, dude, this is so messed up. I can't like print this out, all these hundreds of random little pages with a screenshot of each receipt. And by the way, I had to also say like, hey, this receipt corresponds to this line item in my spreadsheet. That's what they asked for. They also asked for like travel itineraries of where I went and like what my business was doing, so much. So then I finally was like, okay, listen, everything's digital. Is there a way to upload digitally? And they said, yes, there's this link you can use to upload. I'm like, great, I'll do it tomorrow. I go to upload and guess what? You can do 5 attachments at a time. And I probably had like 140 attachments total. I swear to God, you guys, like it was absolute hell. So I did. I spent hours and hours uploading 5 things at a time. Well, guess what? 6 months later, when I finally got another thing from the IRS, guess what they said? We never received anything from you. At this point, I was fucking livid. Like I had spent hours, days, weeks, and it had been like, by the way, this was like over a period of a year because they're so slow to get back to you that things take a long time. So now we're like 5 years out from the actual year that they're auditing. And guess what happens next? I go and file my taxes. I'm supposed to get around a $10,000 return. They kept it. They kept it because they said I still owed it, that they hadn't received anything from me. Never mind that I had tried to send them things like multiple times, and every single time they just said, we didn't get anything. So you guys, I'm off the fucking rails at this point. I'm pissed at my tax person. I'm pissed at myself. I'm very pissed at the IRS. So then I decide that I'm going to hire a lawyer. So I go online and I'm like looking for a lawyer. I've hired a lawyer for my property tax stuff just to like help with property taxes. And I asked them about it and they're like, sure, you can do this. It's going to cost like $3,000 though, if it's worth it to you. And I was like, it's worth it to me. They just kept my $10,000 return. And on principle alone, I'm just pissed. I've spent so much time. There's no way. The cool thing was with the lawyers, all I had to do was send them everything I had already prepared. And they were like, we're on it. Like, don't worry. So we submit everything again. We don't hear anything. We don't hear anything. Another 6 months goes by. And then finally, I get a letter from the IRS saying, we received what you sent us. Like, okay, great. We're going to send you your money back. Like, you'll get a check in the mail. So now I have been in this audit process for 3 years and it's now like 6 years out. It's 2024 and I'm waiting for that check and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And something like 8 months later, I get a check in the mail from the IRS for the original amount plus interest. And I cashed that motherfucking check like I've never cashed a check before. Was this an episode or a rant? I don't know, but I'm here to tell you that if you ever get audited by the IRS, it can be a game of attrition, but it is worth it because I honestly think they're just trying to screw people over sometimes and just hoping that you don't respond to their audit request and they can just keep your money. So I wanted to share that story with you in case it's helpful, in case you ever get audited, in case your income ever changes and the IRS gives you the side eye. Absolutely stand up for yourself. Absolutely hire a lawyer if it's worth it. Like if it's more than like $8,000, it'll probably cost you a couple thousand to get a lawyer to help you, depending on where you live. But man, I just wanted to share that with everyone. I hope it's useful. I hope you never get audited by the IRS. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your money journey. If you heard something that made you think in a new way or expanded your views about money today, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave me a cute little note in the form of a review. See you next time. As always, a quick but important reminder that everything I share here is solely for the purpose of your entertainment, education, and inspiration. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as personal financial, legal, or investment advice. Everyone's financial situation is wildly different, and that's why it's so important that you do your own research and decide what's right for you.